For us, it's a daily thing.
It's every day, right?
This is Mammoth Daily
We're going to take you inside the locker room
with Mike Fulta.
We want this show to be about the fans, and we want this show to be driven by our Utah Mammoth community.
And Adrian Denny.
Fans can submit what they want to hear us talk about, what they want to hear Utah weigh in on. It's all going to be here.
Here's Mike and AD with you.
Utahns, countrymen, lend me your ears.
Right here on Mammoth Daily.
Welcome to your Thursday expert edition of Mammoth Daily. I am Mike Fulta. He is Adrian Denny. We are your Hockey Night in Utah radio crew. And Adrian, just full transparency, we had recorded this segment already. We had our first segment planned. We were going to preview tonight's game against the Philadelphia Flyers. But last night, relatively late on the East Coast, but just in the evening, I guess, back home, we had the news break that MacKenzie Weegar has been traded to the Utah Mammoth. It's time to break that trade down. AD, the first big swing of the trade deadline for the Utah Mammoth, and they bring in a versatile puck-moving defenseman that has been basically the number one D on a bad Calgary team, but you get a guy who's playing in the prime of his career. And for him, you give up Oli Mata, 3 second-round picks, and a prospect as well. Very exciting stuff for the Mammoth, but what are your initial thoughts on the deal?
I'm excited. The Mammoth bringing in what Bill called a defenseman who's going to be part of their top four, can play power play, can play penalty kill. He's 32 years old. This is his 10th season in the NHL. He's in year 3 of an 8-year deal, Mike. So MacKenzie Weegar is now part of the long-term plan for the Utah Mammoth. And he's a player that is also an alternate captain in Calgary. He's known for being a good guy, for being a character guy. And it sounds like just somebody that's going to go right into that Utah locker room, Mike, be assigned a stall and feel like everybody that we go in and talk to. As I talked to some folks around the NHL here as the deal was done, and I got you guys as broadcasters are going to love him, and obviously the alternate captaincy in Calgary speaks for itself. So bringing in a veteran D-man who is good, who can play the minutes. He's averaging over 23 minutes a game. Mike, he's a guy that blocks a lot of shots. He's 9th in the NHL in hits, and he's a good D. He can move the puck, can play the power play, can play the penalty kill. It's what we were talking about. The Mammoth going out at the deadline, not necessarily making a trade, Mike, making an addition to the roster.
Just came from that press conference with Bill Armstrong, where he spoke to the media. We had Cole Bagley and Brogan Houston, 2 local reporters in Utah. They were out covering the team here in Philly. We just got back from the hotel, so it was interesting to hear. You mentioned his leadership qualities. He wears the A, or wore the A, in Calgary. That was something you heard a lot about at the press conference, and something you hear a lot about when you dig deeper into MacKenzie Weegar. From reports that you can read online, various sources, and just articles that I've read, Adrian, made him seem to be one of their choices in Calgary to potentially take over the captaincy once Michael Backlund eventually retired or stepped down. So it says a lot about his character. You mentioned his physical style, the hits, second in the NHL in blocks as well. I can't remember if you mentioned that, but something that Matt McConnell brought up from seeing Weegar over the years was his ability to play that playoff style. Like he's not the biggest guy. Kind of reminds me a lot of Sean Dursey in the way that he's really versatile, has a ton of offensive upside. Not even upside, because we know what he is at this point, but has a ton of offense to his game. Had 20 goals a couple years ago, but has that mean side to him too. Will be physical. Will win battles, is prickly around the net. And that was another talking point during that media scrum, if you will. So really interesting trade. And you mentioned the years, AD. This is not a rental. This is a guy who's brought in to be a core of this team.
Yeah, and Mike, a strong defenseman overall, too. We've talked about John Marino and Nate Schmidt being in the top 10 in plus minus during the course of this season. He's had a plus 40 in the NHL, and it came with the Florida Panthers. And Mike, the Florida Panthers acquired Matthew Tkachuk the summer of 2022, and they paid a haul to get Tkachuk, and MacKenzie Weegar was part of that deal going to Calgary. And, for Calgary, losing Tkachuk and losing Johnny Gaudreau in free agency going to Columbus, they made an investment into MacKenzie Weegar, signing him to an 8-year contract, making him a cornerstone of that organization. And for Calgary at this point, they're in a situation where they're not close to being a playoff team. They were last year, and they sold off Rasmus Anderson, their top defenseman, in the last month, and MacKenzie Weegar here. So they're in a sell-off. They're parting ways with their best players that have term on their contracts, and the Mammoth wanted to make a trade for a player like this who would have term. And what they gave up, Mike, Oli Mata moves on. 3 second-round draft picks. 2 of those second-round draft picks were acquired by Bill Armstrong as part of other deals. So you're essentially trading Oli Mata for MacKenzie Weegar and 1 of your second-round picks and 2 of your second-round picks in the stash, and a prospect in Jonathan Castagna, who was drafted 3rd round in 2023. And the prospect pool is deep, but Mike, there's a lot of prospects to wade your way through if you're a 3rd rounder from 2023. So he was going to have a long way to go to get to the NHL.
Yeah, Castagna, not sure exactly how you say his last name, to be fair, but he was having a good year at Cornell right now, unsigned, I should say, unsigned right now. So the Mammoth trade his rights essentially to Calgary, and the other 2 second-round picks, New York Rangers and Ottawa Senators. Those are the ones that the Mammoth had acquired, or Bill Armstrong had acquired, I should say. And Oli Mata, who was a great Mammoth. He was traded for early last season, really came in and totally changed the back end for Utah at a time when they desperately needed help on the blue line. And so he served a big role for the team in its inaugural season. In hindsight now, with the trade in the rear view, it's interesting to see those 3 games coming out of break for Oli Mata as kind of a trial, basically, a showcase for Oli Mata to kind of show the rest of the league, show the scouts that he can still play at a high level. 2-time Stanley Cup winner, and always great to talk to in the media as well. Yeah, well, one of the best guys. Like
we'll miss Oli Mata, and you talk about the conversations in particular, but really you could say salvaged the season last year for the Mammoth in that late night trade in October, the night after the team blew the 4-1 third period lead, lost to San Jose when they were short on the blue line, and Oli Mata was a big part of the inaugural season and earned the 3-year contract last March. So happy trails to Oli. And Mike, and another thing here, we've still got time left before the trade deadline at 1 p.m. on Friday, and the Mammoth made this deal, but nothing that was given up in this deal is going to keep any other deal from being able to be completed. They still have their 1st round pick from this upcoming June's draft, and Bill Armstrong mentioning in that media availability that you just came from that we're still going here. We're still looking.
Yeah, and one more thing on Mata too. You look at the $6 million cap hit per year that Weegar brings with him for the next 5 seasons until 2031. Oli was making 3.5 with the Mammoth, and so that's $3.5 million that wasn't in the lineup every night. And so you clear that 3.5 off the books. And Adrian, you get the best player in the deal. Like I it's hard to say which side wins a trade. I think both sides can win a trade a lot of times, especially when one team has a different objective than another team. Like Calgary's trying to acquire future assets, right? And the Mammoth are trying to get to the playoffs and compete in the playoffs. So there's different objectives here. Both teams can win a trade, but the Mammoth get the best player in the trade while also clearing off Mata's contract that was, $3.5 million for your seventh defenseman, basically over the next couple years. That's a plus as well that should be looked at from Bill Armstrong's asset management point of view. And you said it perfectly. I think you keep those first rounders in play. You have your prospect pool almost totally intact with the loss of Constania in mind, but you hear other names being floated out there like Robert Thomas of St. Louis, and like others that we've heard, those big names. You still have those big chips. You ever sit at a blackjack table, AD, when you're at Wendover or driving through at the West Desert? You sit at a blackjack table, and some of those chips are worth a little bit more than other chips. They're the same size, but different colors, and some are worth 25, some are worth 50, some are worth 100. The ones that you play with, those are probably 1,000. I'm on the little $5 chips. Mine are usually white, maybe $1. But you still have all your blue chips still in your stockpile.
I'm a downtown Vegas guy. We've talked about this. I was a downtown Vegas guy back in that era. But I hear you, Mike. The ones, the fives, the tens, or in the case of Bill Armstrong, the blue chips. And Mike, short term here, MacKenzie Weegar is a Canadian coming from a Canadian team to a team in the U.S. So that means that his immigration to work in the United States will need to be approved and rubber stamped before he can go on employment with the Utah Mammoth, if you will, on the ice. So obviously that's being taken care of right now. That's one positive thing that could help push this along a little faster, Mike. This deal was done on a Wednesday. The trade deadline's Friday. You're going into the weekend, so there's 2 days. So getting it back by Friday would be fast. But if you make the deal Friday, it's Monday before anybody takes a look at the petition for his immigration.
Maybe we have you on as a Thursday expert sometime and talk about immigration and traveling. Because did you do all that in Tucson and ECHL in Utah?
I did player immigration and travel for the Grizzlies in the ECHL. So, Mike, I am very, very confident in having a conversation in regards to player immigration, visas, tryouts, different ways to get into the country to play professional hockey, whether it be for a training camp tryout or signing a 1-year contract. It was educational. So I've got contacts in New York City that are immigration attorneys.
I've got some great stats on second rounders here. This is an article from the Hockey Writers. I'll get the name shortly, but if anybody is crying a river over dismissing or parting ways with second round draft picks, here's some stats for you. According to this article from the hockeywriters.com, the odds of a second round draft pick playing just one game in the NHL is 68%. So a third of second round draft picks never even reach the NHL. The odds of a second round pick playing 100 or more games in the NHL is only 40% in this sample size, which is thousands of players. So of even playing just over a season, like basically parts of 2 seasons in the NHL, it's 40%. 60% isn't even playing that much. The numbers keep decreasing on down the list, but interesting numbers to kind of put into perspective the value of second round picks. Jacob Billington wrote this article back in late January, so thank you to Jacob for that. But just kind of goes to show it doesn't take long in the NHL draft before you are really throwing darts at a board. And there's so much variability because you're drafting these kids at 18. And I tell you what, AD, losing second round draft picks, even losing 3 of them, I don't lose a wink of sleep over that.
No, especially when you got the stockpile that the Mammoth do. But even so, if you're bringing in an NHL player, the percentages are already higher that he's going to play more games for your organization than the pick you're parting with, in terms of even if it's a rental whose contract expires at the end of the year, which the Mammoth did a lot more than that, with Weegar being in year 3 of 8. And Mike, it's another statement from ownership, from management to that locker room. We're going to do anything we can to support you guys and this team, and add anything we can to help this team be in a position to win as many games as possible in the regular season and into the playoffs. And now you've got another elite defenseman as part of that the Mammoth have acquired in trades. Bill Armstrong, 3 big trades: Sergachev, Peterka, MacKenzie Weegar. You've heard the term big game hunting about the Mammoth. I don't think there's been a bigger big game hunter in the NHL in the last 18 months than Bill Armstrong. And Mike, you'd have to say this is the second or third, probably the third biggest trade in the NHL this season, with Quinn Hughes going to Minnesota being the biggest, and Rasmus Andersson going to Calgary the second, MacKenzie Weegar to Utah the third.
It's a huge mover, moves the needle. And you look at the Calgary reaction, and I'm just looking online at Twitter, and a lot of their fans are bummed they didn't get a first round pick for MacKenzie Weegar. So you got to give props to Bill Armstrong on that front. AD, honestly, just being in the room with Bill as he was addressing the media that was there. Sometimes when we see Bill and things are going well, he makes a good deal or a deal that he likes. He's chipper. He's excited. He's bubbly even. He was pretty measured tonight.
Okay.
Very focused. You can tell he's been making a lot of calls. You can tell there have been a lot of conversations. I think I'm not sure he got out and saw the daylight or Philadelphia's version of daylight here today. It was a really heavy. It's been a really heavy stretch of work for Utah's general manager. But let's look ahead to the application piece a little bit here, AD. We've talked about the player. We've talked about the deal. Let's talk about the application piece real quick with the Mammoth before we get to Dom in our Thursday expert. But he's a right-hand shot, AD. He's similar. I mentioned Sean Durzi earlier, right? Like puck mover, plays with an edge. I think this is a guy who we're going to see on Utah's top defense pair very soon. And I don't know how quickly he'll join the team. Mammoth play tonight in Philadelphia. I do not expect MacKenzie Weegar to be with the team here against Philly. I would not be surprised if he's not with the team in Columbus. I don't know that. But again, this is not a rental where you have to zip him in to get your money's worth. MacKenzie Weegar is part of the core of this group now. So I think I would not be surprised if with his skill set, based on the type of player he is, if he is playing Mikhail Sergachev's right side. And now you look at the right side, the right shot D for the Utah Mammoth between Marino, between Weegar, and between Durzi, and that's a pretty darn good group right there. That's a really, really good group of D on the right side. We heard Bill say he can play power play, he can play penalty kill. He could play in all situations. So he's been playing a bunch of hard minutes for the Calgary Flames. I think he's going to come in and pretty quickly be playing a lot of hard minutes for the Utah Mammoth, except he's going to be on the right side of the scoreboard more than he was in Calgary.
And Mike, this is a guy that, historically speaking, is playing every game, every season. Going back to the 2021 campaign with the Florida Panthers, played in 54 or 56 games in the bubble season. The next year, 80-82. First year with Calgary, 81-82. 23-24 with Calgary, all 82. 81-82 last year. And this year, same thing, 60 games with Calgary. So you look at that resume on the Mammoth roster, and this year it obviously hasn't been that, but that's Alexander Kerfoot games, playing every game, being ready year after year after year after year, which is another parallel to a Bill Armstrong signing. He's over 6 foot, just over 200 pounds. So those are the weights and measures on the new number 52 for the Mammoth, MacKenzie Weegar.
And check out the penalty minutes too. He's already got 69 penalty minutes this year. You kind of look back over his career, and he's in the 30s to 60s range. It was up to 81 one year. But just kind of adding to that idea that he's willing to stick up for teammates. He's not the biggest defenseman, but he's certainly anything but a pushover. And I think it's a really exciting addition for this team. And like I said, AD, I don't know what your thoughts on it are, but I see him playing big minutes right away. And you didn't give up a first, but you did give up a decent amount for him. And this is a guy who's coming in not to just be a third pair guy, but to be a difference maker.
And signing that contract in 2022 that kicked in 2023, 8 years, $50 million, right? He's in year 3 of the 8-year contract, but he signed it the year before it kicked in. So you look at figures there, that's another price that he was signed for, and today you'd be paying a lot more for
100%. Yeah, well, like $6 million is the new $4 million, right? And he'll be 37 years old by the time this deal's done. A lot of times when that's the case, you're like, this could age poorly. But salary cap is continuing to rise. $6 million, I think. Even if he helps you compete in these first few years, and then by the end of that contract, maybe he is a third pair guy, you don't mind that at all. It's easily worth the price for what you're getting right now, and even the next couple years as well, while he's in these prime years. So exciting times, AD. Really exciting times. He had to waive his no move clause, which he did. That was kind of one of the big holdups. From when it was originally reported by Elliot Friedman to when the team could announce it. But he waived his no move clause. So don't let anybody tell you that free agents and players don't want to play in Utah. False narrative. But anything else on MacKenzie Weegar, Adrian, before we get to talk to him in person?
Yeah, Mike, we were talking about his salary and being at a manageable rate, and it just allows Utah to have maximum flexibility on the salary cap, in other trades, in what they gave up. So I think the Mammoth are just as flexible in every aspect going into today that they were yesterday before they made the deal. They can keep adding, keep going, and keep building this.
Gosh, they just updated puckpedia.com. That's what I like to use for looking at these salaries and AAVs, and it's up there. He's on there. Him and Sergachev, both UFA the same year, 2031. Not that matters right now, but boy, you look at that group of defensemen, and it's good. AD, you don't have a Cale Makar, you don't have a Quinn Hughes, but 1 through 6, 1 through 7, that's as solid a group as you can get in the NHL from top to bottom. One of the deepest And that could be a segment for us later, but that has to be one of the deepest groups in the National Hockey League.
It's incredible. Sergachev, Dursey, Schmidt, Weegar, Cole, did I say Marino?
Yeah.
Marino? I was
Nick
moving guys
DeSimone?
around.
Yeah.
I was moving guys around. I'm like, who did I not say?
Really, really exciting. And as we mentioned earlier, we've only heard good things about his character. So we're going to try and talk to some folks from Calgary for you, and bring you those interviews in later shows. But we tried to talk with Matt Larkin. I don't think we mentioned that. We tried to talk with Matt Larkin from the Daily Faceoff. We had a great interview with Matt that I recorded earlier today, and this is the first time this has ever happened. But we had issues with saving the recording. It was nobody's fault. It just happened, and we lost the interview, unfortunately. And so, deepest apologies to Matt. He gave us a great 15 minutes. You'll have to just take our word for it if you want to check him out on Twitter. He's at M Larkin Hockey on Twitter, and on X you can find him on Daily Faceoff. But great, he gave me great insight. I'll try to share it with everybody throughout the rest of the week. But a huge deal, a huge deal for the Utah Mammoth, and still work to be done. AD, it's been a long night over here. Anything else, or can I go to bed before we shut her down for the night?
I think, Mike, in our cram session on MacKenzie Weegar, we were pulling stuff out of everything, but I think we got to everything that we wanted to cover. Like notes here, computer screen, this sticky note. You racing back from the media availability. I think, man, we literally covered everything we wanted to on MacKenzie.
There's a lot of ground to cover because he's a very good player. He has been for a while, and I'm assuming he'll be wearing 52 for the Mountain Blue coming up. That was his number in Calgary. But a really big piece added, not just for the team this year, but for this team moving forward as well. Exciting stuff. But let's get to Dom Moore. We've got Dom Moore coming up in our next segment, our Thursday expert, and then we preview tonight's game against the Philadelphia Flyers. So we recorded a little out of order today, but we had breaking news, and we wanted to do our due diligence to MacKenzie Weegar and this big trade. So moving on, we have Dom Moore in our next segment. He talks to us about what it's like to be a player during this time of year, right around the trade deadline.
Expert analysis, expert opinions.
We've got Dom Moore here with us back-to-back weeks on our Thursday expert edition of Mammoth Daily. Dom, it's crazy that we're at this time of the year already, but the trade deadline's coming up. Final stretch of the season for the Utah Mammoth.
Don't remind me, by the way. I've got still trauma from being traded so many times at the trade deadline. I don't need this kind of stress, Mike.
How many times at the deadline?
Honestly, I think it was only 3.
Only 3.
But that's enough, right? 3's enough to.
But by the end of the last couple years of your career, trade deadline comes around, or were you
it's a huge sigh of relief. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. Just sitting on pins and needles, in the weeks leading up to it. The reason was I was always on short-term contracts. The longest contract I ever had was 2 years. And most of the time I was on a 1-year deal. So, and I was a guy that a lot of teams would want in the playoffs, just for some of the attributes that I brought, versatility I brought. So teams that were looking, to shore up a good team and add another versatile piece. I could fit into their cap because I was only on a 1-year deal. Not like, as you know, it's hard to trade for a guy on a 5-year deal. It just doesn't happen. So that was a lot of the reason why I ended up being moved. But it's not something I would have wanted. I'm prefer to be in one place, but I wouldn't trade it, pardon the pun, for the world, given that I had some great experiences because of it.
They've tried to trade me, but no takers. So I think waivers might be in the future for me, back down to the AHL. But when you look at this Mammoth team, Dom, coming down the last 20-something games of the season. At the Olympic break, they put themselves in a really good spot. How do you view, I guess, or project this Mammoth group, what they need to do, how they need to continue to play moving down the final stretch? Because we've heard the expectations for playoffs all year, and now this is where the rubber meets the road. And there's good teams that are arming up in the Western Conference. We saw the LA Kings trade for Artemi Panarin right before the Olympic break. So there are some good teams that are coming for those wild card spots.
Yeah. So are you asking about trades or just how to play down the stretch? What side of things?
I guess just like I'm kind of, it's a terrible question, but in general, I'm just tossing some chum in the water. Like, what do you think of this team and their chances to make the playoff based on the way they're shaped right now?
Yeah. Listen, I mean, I think in some respects, your trades are the idea of these players that came back, right? Like Cooley and Kerfoot. I mean, you acquired Kerfoot. He's barely played all season, right? So in some respects, it's like you infuse the team with another talented, valuable player in that way. Cooley's missed a bunch of time. I think that the way that, Bill Armstrong and company are looking at the trade deadline is if there is some deal to be made that improves the team, not only now, but for the next 3, maybe even 5 years, that's the kind of deal I would make, right? It's the same type of deal that was made for Sergachev, the same type of deal that was made for Peterka. It had a long-term horizon on it. That doesn't mean you can't do something that can help you now, because I think the team is really motivated to make the playoffs and achieve that goal. So that is paramount. Don't get me wrong, but I think they wouldn't want to sacrifice the future over loading up now. That's the balance that I think they want to strike. Having said that, if they don't do anything, I think that's fine too, right? I think that the roster is good enough to, make this run count and play these games like they're game sevens down the stretch. And that's one of the good things about where the team is at. They've been playing meaningful games now for 2 months because they know that every game they go into, they have a chance to fall back or climb up. They're right on that line. And so that, I think, is a real asset for them. And they've performed exceedingly well, since the new year in that regard.
What's it like as a player when you've got a mid-season acquisition? You've got a guy coming in to your locker room to be part of a good team, and he's jumping right into that, right? We got Oli Mata last year, needed him. Nick DeSimone off of waivers, needed him. But any kind of acquisition here would be an addition. What's it like for the team when you add a player, and what's it like for the player all of a sudden getting on a flight, going to a new city, taking an Uber to the practice facility, skating, and being in the lineup that night just like that?
Yeah. Yeah, it really is something when you think about it. Just you imagine if you were working a desk job and then all of a sudden you got traded to the business down the street and you're expected to just clean out your desk, walk down the street and go in and sit down to someone, in a cubicle over from them and just make friends and start and getting to work like the next hour. I mean, that's literally what it's like. I've been in that boat. I think the close-knitness of the locker room is a big part of it, and having leaders that are really good at welcoming and making people feel at home quickly. By all indications, the Utah Mammoth locker room is incredibly close-knit. Guys like Sean Dursey, I think, are leaders in that regard. And I have no doubt that they would assimilate someone quickly, any trade that was made. As a player, I think, if you're that person walking into the new office, I think you just got to focus on what you do. It's easy to start to think about, all right, I've got new line mates now, new team, what are they doing? How can I, get myself integrated? But I think you lose your way when you do that. The key is just to focus on what you do. You were acquired for a reason because of the game you play and the style of play that you bring. And so just focus on that and let the rest take care of itself.
Do you have any good trade stories for us, or maybe like your quickest turnaround, where you're in one city with one team, then boom, another city, another team?
Yeah, I mean, there's always more stories than we have time for, but the one that comes to mind right now is when I was in Tampa. I warmed up. We were playing the San Jose Sharks. Did I tell this one already?
I haven't heard this.
We heard it last year on Hockey Night in Utah on the radio, just quickly, just right
Oh,
before the
okay.
game.
Yeah. So I was a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning. We were playing the San Jose Sharks in Tampa. Warm-ups. I'm out there for warm-ups. I come off the ice after warm-ups, and the general manager, Steve Yzerman, comes into the locker room and informs me that I've been traded. And not only that, but I've been traded to the San Jose Sharks, who are down the hall. And so I was like, are they going to ask me to play now? Like literally instantaneously against my old team that I warmed up with? I mean, this is off the charts insane. And they did not expect me to play. I think they wanted to make sure that I didn't play that game for fear that I might get hurt in the game after they had consummated the deal. But I literally walked down the hall in my, base layer, to meet the new general manager. And the funny thing was that after the game, I was supposed to just fly out instantly with the Sharks, which I didn't necessarily want to do because it all happened very fast. I would have liked to have had a night, to just say bye and get organized and stuff. Sure enough, there was like a massive thunderstorm and the Sharks had to stay over, which wasn't their plan. And so I did get to have my night and get organized. And then the next morning flew out with the new team.
Maybe you think they traded for you just so that they didn't have to play you? They're like, we can't handle this guy in the lineup. Let's just trade for him.
Must have been that. Yeah, let's go with that. Yeah.
Dom, you touched on it, but the week leading up to the trade deadline, what's it like in the locker room, right? Because you just nobody wants to go.
Yeah.
Is there a feeling? Is it unspoken? But is there tension? Is it business as usual? What's it like in a locker room for a team that's pushing to make the playoffs?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different situations with respect to that question. The difference is if you're on a good team, there's a sense that, all right, they don't want to disrupt much here because we're a good team. They don't want to rock the boat. But there's an essence of, well, they might make a trade to help us be a contender, right? So if you're on a really good team, top contending team, there's always an expectation that there's going to be a move because they want to add something to put us over the top for the Stanley Cup. If you're somewhere in the middle, there's a sense that we're a playoff contending team. We don't want to rock the boat, so maybe we'll just stay put. I think there's less fear in the locker room about disruption in that case. And then there's the bottom teams, right? Where there's going to be trades and it's just a matter of who. And there's a lot of anxiety in the locker room in that group. So I'd say in terms of order of anxiety, the middle group has the least because there's not likely to be a ton of deals because the team's in good shape. They're contending for a spot, but not necessarily a Stanley Cup contender thought of yet. And like I said, below that and above that, there's some moves to be made.
you get a chance to add a guy that you think can add something regardless of the position, and the payout is feasible to not sacrifice anything. You're going to do it. How often does something like that just come along that's, maybe the perfect fit to add a player you didn't know that you needed, but you feel like, okay, this is a chance to bring in a guy that makes this one player better at a decent cost.
Yeah, the reality is that Utah's in such a great position, right? They've got so many assets to work with. But again, it's like walking into Costco with a full wallet. You don't want to just blow it on stuff you don't need, right? You want to be opportunistic, find the right deals, as Matt McConnell would, for example. Make sure that you're choosy with getting good value, and so I think that this team is going to take a page out of the Matt McConnell playbook of looking for value and quality, and not just spending to spend. But they're in a great spot, as is Matt McConnell with his deep pockets. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. He should pay for every dinner. I mean, he should take us to like the food court. We can all get hot dogs and pizza at Costco. But Dom, thank you again for joining us on our Thursday Expert. Interesting to see what happens here with the trade deadline approaching rapidly. But always fun to chat, Dom. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you again soon.
This is Mammoth Daily.
Mammoth taking on the Philadelphia Flyers later tonight. Utah continuing a 5-game road trip after a nice 3-2 win over the Washington Capitals in D.C. a couple of nights ago. It was a nice bounce-back game for the Utah Mammoth. AD, I'm just going to turn it over to you and kind of relax for a little bit, maybe shut my eyes, because I loaded up with a cheesesteak for lunch, and I'm about to pass out.
Did you go to Pat's, Geno's, or one of the other ones that's not one of the marketing sensations of Philadelphia? Because you got Pat's and Geno's on the corner. The locals don't eat there. If you've been to Philly, you apparently go to other spots. What'd you do, Mike?
I didn't. I just found the closest one. I found the closest one to our hotel. And so I've been told not to go to some of those tourist traps. The bread's not good enough. They don't use the right cheese or something like that. I don't know. But I walked into the closest cheesesteak place I could find, and I said, give me your number one. Give me your fastball down the middle. I'm an out-of-towner. Just load me up. And it was good. I think it's pretty hard to mess up a cheesesteak. It was good. It's been fun trying the different cuisines on the road, as it always is. But had a cheesesteak. So I'll let you take over. Flyers on the docket here, AD. And it's another big one for the Mammoth as they try and improve their standings position in that top wildcard spot in the Western Conference. Obviously, the trade deadline is looming. But Philly, a team that is a few games out and could very well be sellers by the time this episode drops, as we record this here on Wednesday. And this is a Thursday show.
Yeah, Mike, Philly 6 points below the playoff line as we enter action on this Thursday. They were last in action against the Toronto Maple Leafs, picked up a 3-2 shootout win on Monday night. So Flyers coming in, Mike, looking for their 4th straight victory. They're 4-1-2 in their last 7. They've played good, and they're kind of playing the hockey that you'd expect to be played under Rick Tocchet. A lot of low-scoring games. Beat the Rangers 3-2 in overtime. Beat the Bruins 3-1. Beat the Maple Leafs 3-2. 5 of their last 6 games have seen 5 or fewer goals. So like 3-1, 3-2 games, the shootout contest. Rick Tocchet's teams are pretty strong defensively, which sometimes keeps them from being one of the top teams offensively. But the Mammoth, Mike, for me, it's all about Karel Vejmelka. 12 of his last 16 starts, he's allowed 2 goals or less, leads the league with a 29-16-2 record, and huge on Tuesday night in DC. Didn't allow a 5-on-5 goal the entire night. So Vejmelka has been the backstop for the Mammoth, and a big one tonight against the Flyers. You look at the matchup, Mike, and for the folks on YouTube, they see it on the graphic. Clayton Keller, the overtime winner in the last meeting on January 21st. These two teams have played 2 straight overtime games. Both of them have been at the Delta Center. Both of them have required Utah comebacks, a 2-goal comeback on January 21st. And that game we saw them February 4th of 2025. It was a game where the Mammoth trailed 1-0, trailed 2-1, had to tie it, and then win at the big 2-goal return for Dylan Gunther in that contest. And Mike, here's another one for you. Mammoth trying to stay undefeated in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, trying to go 4-0 in PA. Right next door in New York, Mike, they're already 6-0 the last 2 years, looking to stay unbeaten in the metro area there on the East Coast and the Metropolitan Division.
I know that Virginia is a Commonwealth at all. I had forgotten about Pennsylvania. Do we have any others?
Massachusetts?
Is it? I believe
so.
it.
Believe so, yeah. As the folks are like, oh boy, here we go. Adrian's starting to recount 5th grade U.S. history. This might get entertaining.
There's one more. There's one more according to Google AI, and you will never guess it.
Oh, is it one of the original 13 colonies?
It is. It is not. It is not.
Oh.
It's east. It is east of the Mississippi, though.
Kentucky.
Yes. Did you know that?
I did. I had to use the Mike Folta test-taking model to eliminate, but asked one question, is it an original 13 colony? No, Kentucky.
Okay. I would never have. I used to live adjacent to Kentucky. Never heard of Kentucky being a Commonwealth before. They don't teach that in Indiana public schools. But yeah, a lot of low-scoring games for Philadelphia. Wasn't the case throughout a lot of the year for them. They have a propensity of giving up the first goal, Adrian. Wasn't the case necessarily against Utah earlier in the year when they jumped out to a 3-0 lead. But they are tied for the fewest first goals scored in the NHL. Them and Vancouver have scored the fewest first goals, so they're usually starting from behind. But they are also tied for the 3rd most comeback wins in the National Hockey League. So even though they often fall behind in the first period, they usually fight their way back into contention. It is interesting. I was looking this up, and there's only 3 teams in the NHL that have a winning record when they allow the first goal in a hockey game. Colorado, Dallas, and Carolina, 3 of the best teams in the league. Philly is not in that group because they do not have a winning record when they allow the first goal. But they're only 1 game below 500. They're like 16, 17, and something when they allow the first goal. So they are very, very good, even when they fall behind early. And so it was the Mammoth that came from behind earlier in the season, back in January against Philly, in that just unbelievable game back at the Delta Center. Don't count out the Flyers, even if the Mammoth jump ahead like they did against Washington the other night.
Yeah, and I'm so intrigued by Matvei Michkov, and I know he's been such a project, and he was drafted by the Flyers in the 2023 NHL entry draft, and there were some teams that he didn't want to go to reportedly, and Philly felt comfortable that he'd go there, but he drove John Tortorella crazy. You've seen some interaction with him and Rick Tocchet, but that's just a kid with just such raw skill that you think at some point he's got to become, on the level of an upcoming star like Macklin Celebrini, like Connor Bedard, because I think he would have been a top 1 or top 2 pick had he not been so picky and not had such a reputation of where he wanted to go. But that's definitely a project that the Flyers have been working on. And as Rick Tocchet is got there, they've really tightened up things defensively. And, it's another one of those teams, Mike. Are they rebuilding? Are they retooling? Are they refurbishing? What is the exact plan? And in the next 24 to 30 hours, we'll see exactly what steps Philly's going to take. But 6 points out of a playoff spot in that mucky Eastern Conference, but they've been in the mix all year. They've been in the top 3 for points, but they stay in games. And as you said, when you go up, you gotta keep your head in a swivel because they keep pushing throughout the entire contest.
Yeah, and they're playing kind of the way that Rick Tocchet likes to play historically. You mentioned that neither team has scored more than 3 goals in any of their last 5 games. So they've been keeping the totals low. It's interesting. I feel like with Tocchet, a lot of his teams were, hard-nosed, played low-scoring games because they had to be. Think of his time in Arizona and Vancouver. They didn't necessarily have the top guns to run and gun with the other teams, the other powerful teams in those Western Conference divisions. And Philly, it's a little bit the same case. Now they have Zegras, who's having himself a decent year. I think he's exceeded expectations in Philadelphia. Michkov has gone the other way. His rookie year, he had 63 points in 80 games. So he wasn't a point-a-game guy, but a really, really good opening season in the National Hockey League coming over from Russia. This year, it's been a different story. He's on pace for, closer to like 45 points, assuming he stays healthy. That's just eyeballing this math, by the way. I didn't do the exact calculations on those, but has seen his numbers dip. I thought he was noticeable against Utah when the teams played. Thing is, Adrian, he just doesn't have the high-end skating that some of those other elite prospects do. Like when Macklin Celebrini skates, he pops. When Logan Cooley, even as a rookie and as a second-year guy, when he skated, he popped. Now, those are some of the elite skaters in the NHL. You don't have to be an elite skater like that to be a really good player. But I think Michkov, because he doesn't have those legs that are an advantage for him as much, he really relies on his skill. And when that skill isn't connecting, it's been hard for him. And we've seen some of the clips of him on the bench going back and forth with Tocchet. They've really tried to make it work with him, and he's as talented as it gets, but a fascinating case study moving ahead. You mentioned he was taken in that 2023 draft and how he was picky. I think it was also just because he was Russian. And at that time in the world, with the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, people weren't thinking he was going to be able to come over from the KHL. Well, he was able to, and the Flyers were grateful for that. But it's kind of a, you said it perfectly. Is it a retool? Is it a refurbish? What's going on? Rasmus Ristolainen's name has been out in a lot of trade talks for Philly. He's one of their defensemen that has been linked around the league to teams looking for another D-man to add to their blue line. Maybe it's just like Adrian. Maybe you just bring the house cleaner over and it's a quick little Swiffer, a quick little dusting. It's not a full teardown. You're not adding on another wing to the house. It's just the monthly cleaning.
Yeah, and Michkov, 5'10", 172, so he's a little guy. And you talk about the engagements and the interactions he's had with Rick Tocchet on the bench. If he was on the TNT set, we could hear what they were talking about. Tocchet always entertaining there with Paul Bissonnette, and I think you think of a different version of that with him and Matvei Michkov. And for the Flyers, they're in the mix, but as we saw last year, 6 points out was a mountain, and trying to overcome that in the second half of the year is a challenge. But they've played well coming out of the break, and looking to get a big win against the Mammoth to keep it going, because they remember what happened at the Delta Center. That was their Carolina game for Utah, right? You're up 4-2 in the third period, and it gets away. And Mike, for the Mammoth, good start to the trip on Tuesday night in Washington. And as I open up my NHL app right now, Mammoth are the top story. Mammoth want the next step into the Stanley Cup playoffs, and they just want to keep motoring through. It was a nice game for Utah on Tuesday, Mike, and it was it was all business. We've seen them be, all business. I thought it was a really good statement game, but I thought in terms of mindset and where they were at, that told me a lot, the way they opened the trip, and excited for tonight in Philadelphia to keep it going before continuing on to Columbus.
I love what Bear was saying. I loved hearing what Bear said about how engaged the team was on the bench, that everybody was pulling the rope in the same way. And they all knew, right? After that loss against Chicago, they all knew that was unacceptable, in the words of a couple of the players, including Alex Kerfoot, who we talked to at morning skate on Tuesday. So everybody was aware. I think that's one of those where you don't even need a rah-rah speech to get up for. It's a group of professionals. They know what's at stake. And I think this group, even more so this season, has been hyper aware of the need to bounce back and prevent those slides. And I think that's the mark of a good team, when you're able to prevent those slides from turning into 3, 4, or 5 games. We saw this team go through that a little bit in November, but boy, since then, it's rarely been consecutive games that ring alarm bells. And when you see one game like that, it's comforting to know that it hardly ever turns into 2. But this is a very winnable game for the Mammoth. Utah, I think, is the better team here. They put themselves in a hole last time these teams met in January. Boy, you'd love to see the Mammoth just control it wire to wire again like they did on Tuesday. But I wanted to give some shout outs. AD, our friend Craig came up to us. I think that was during our last homestand. Craig came up, and as did Solomon. Solomon came and said hello. And we also had Adam, Rebecca, and Stephanie, I believe, that came up. So I'm just going through my notes here. I know I missed some shout outs from earlier, but thank you to everybody who has come and said hi to us. I know there's some Mammoth fans in Philly following us. Our good friend Jerry, Mammoth Almanac, is on an Eastern swing, so I'll keep my eyes peeled for him the next time I'm cheesecake shopping, or cheesesteak shopping, I should say.
Did you get a pic of the cheesesteak, Mike, that you could tweet out or pop on Instagram for us, for those of us living vicariously through you on the road?
You're the food pick guy. You're the Lord help us if Adrian's on the road trip, because we're gonna be seeing every one of his meals. Here's a granola bar I ate earlier today. Here's a PB Fit bar from this evening. Anything else though on Philly, AD, before we send it to Dom?
No, it's a big game for the Mammoth. They're all big. That's the fun thing about being in March and April is everything's just so magnified. And Tuesday's done, and the Mammoth took care of business on Tuesday because Sunday was done, and now they move into Thursday, and tonight is the task at hand. There's one thing to do. That's beat the Flyers and move on to Columbus.
Can you come back at 3? Okay, thank you.
A little special visitor on Mammoth Daily. I should have brought her in. I keep meaning to do that. How funny would that be, right? Having some of our wonderful housekeeping staff.
Oh yeah,
on Mammoth Daily. They could be our Thursday expert.
Yeah, they could. We take them, or Friday free for all is always open, as the folks know. So
that was not turn down service, AD. That was the real deal.
Big day coming up for the Mammoth tomorrow. We'll recap the game. Friday free for all with the topics picked by you, our local hockey segment. And then again, any breaking news, Mike and I are back to unpack it in a special edition of Mammoth Daily Friday afternoon for your drive home. Have a great Thursday, everybody. Game tonight, 5 p.m. on the AM side. AM 1280, because the Jazz are in DC to take on the Wizards on 97.5. So AM 1280, KSL Sports app, NHL app. Talk to you coming up at 4 for Hockey Night in Utah.